Chapter 1. They all look the same, was all that Beauty could think as she stared at the 20 bunches of flowers that had been laid out before her. They were all pale blue and pink, like they had been picked specifically for her tastes. The elderly florist and her assistants were anxiously waiting for Beauty's reaction. "They are very lovely," Beauty said with a kind smile. "Of course, Your Highness," said the florist while nervously clasping her hands. "But we need you to pick one for the center arrangement at the Queen's tea party." Beauty sighed, glancing over the identical bunches. "That one," she said, randomly pointing to one at the end. One of the young assistants immediately burst out crying. "It's okay, Amy," another assistant hushed while patting the crying girl on the back. "She didn't pick mine either." Beauty immediately felt her stomach drop. "I'm sorry," Beauty apologized. "I'm so sorry. We can use the one that she made." "No," the crying assistant sobbed. "You picked the best one, Your Highness. I should have done better." Beauty looked helplessly to the florist for guidance. The florist shook her head and gestured to the assistants that they should leave. The crying girl was led away by her friends. "Don't worry, Your Highness," the florist said. "Amy's work is usually the best, but she'll do even better now that she's learned a lesson." "Oh," Beauty said, unsure of what to say. "The final product will be delivered this Friday," said the florist. "Thank you for your patronage." "Of course." Beauty gave a half-hearted wave as the florist left her room. Beauty slumped down on her sofa the moment they were gone, letting out a sigh of relief as she massaged her aching forehead. As tedious as that was, it had been the highlight of her day. The rest of her schedule was full of even more mind-numbing events and appointments. Beauty glanced out the window, gazing over the sprawling palace grounds. She was living in the epitome of luxury and wealth, but she felt utterly empty. When she'd been married off young, everyone assured Beauty that it would be her happily ever after. But now, years later, Beauty was simply expected to be a good hostess and a womb for future heirs. "There's my favorite princess," said a warm deep voice as two large arms wrapped their way around her waist. "Hello, Charming," Beauty said with a tired smile. "How was polo?" "Wonderful," said Prince Charming. Dirt clung to his shirt and his dark hair was plastered to his forehead with sweat. "I won. Just like always. Congratulations." Beauty tensed as his hand settled possessively on her hip. "What do you say to a victory celebration, dear wife?" Charming murmured into her ear. "Perhaps my good luck will grant us a boy this time." Beauty gently pulled away from him. "I have a hair appointment in 30 minutes. It was a lie, but she didn't feel like being close to him while he still reeked of another woman's perfume. "Cancel it." Charming reached for her again. "We can be done by then." "I would rather not." Beauty slipped out of his grasp. "I don't think the hairdresser would be too happy with me." "Fine," said Charming shortly, stepping away. "If you'll excuse me, I'm going to wash off the stench of the day." Beauty's gaze followed him as he left her bedroom and entered his own suite. "He's probably going to invite a maid or two," Beauty thought bitterly. She had long given up on hoping that he would remain faithful. She was foolish for not realizing that he'd been nicknamed Charming for a reason. Beauty clenched her hands into fists as she attempted to compose herself. No matter what happened between them, Beauty wouldn't let herself cry. "Not anymore. It's a wonderful day. It's a perfect day," Beauty chanted under her breath. But her words were hollow and her eyes were beginning to sting. She turned away from the window, walking towards the door and slipping out of her room. "Mama!" cried Chloe as she dashed towards Beauty, waving a blonde doll in her tiny fist. Beauty immediately knelt down, opening her arms for her 5-year-old daughter to leap into her embrace. Chloe had inherited her long blonde hair and blue eyes, even though her high cheekbones and small nose resembled her father's. "Hello, my baby," Beauty whispered. "How are you today?" "Great," Chloe squealed. "Miss Etta gave me a new doll. Look, it looks just like you." "She is beautiful," Beauty agreed, taking the blonde doll and turning it over. Her younger sister Paige remained firmly planted in her seat, furiously scrawling on a piece of paper with a color pencil. Her tight brown curls were tied back with a red ribbon. "Do you want to show me what you're drawing, Paige?" Beauty asked. "Nope," Paige said, without even looking up. "Your Highness," said the head nanny Etta as she swept into the room, her black dress immaculate and gray hair tied back into a tight bun. "What brings you here?" "Just visiting my adorable daughters," Beauty said, giving Chloe a tight hug. "Whatever for?" Etta said with a laugh. "They are doing wonderfully. There is no need for you to trouble yourself." "It's not any trouble," Beauty said. "I assure you, Your Highness, we are taking excellent care of them," Etta insisted. "Your Highness must have far more important things to do than lowering herself to spending time with children." But Beauty tried to protest, but the head nanny took hold of her arm, gently leading her from the room. There is no need to concern yourself with the children's upbringing. That's what we humble servants are for. You should go out into the sun and enjoy yourself. But, Beauty tried to argue, I like being around them. As do we, Etta assured her. We'll teach them everything they need to know. So your highness is free to focus on your duties. We wouldn't want to impair your ability to produce the next heir. Beauty tried to protest, but Etta gently pushed Beauty out into the hallway. I'm sure your highness must be wanted in the garden, Etta said. Several of your friends have already gathered, so they must be looking forward to your company. But Beauty attempted to protest, but Etta closed the door in her face. And then I said that white and ivory are certainly not the same color, said Augusta as she dramatically waved her silk-gloved hands in the air. But then he said that the guests wouldn't tell the difference. The other ladies let out collective gasps from around the table. I mean, does he expect me to just sit back and take that? Augusta cried, her voice echoing across the garden. Of course not, one woman assured her while daintily sipping on her tea. Beauty nodded while barely paying attention to the conversation, watching the sun glitter off the nearby lake. Her friends were all high-born ladies that had been thrust together due to status alone. She couldn't care less about what was being discussed. What do you think, princess? Asked one duchess, looking straight at Beauty. Oh, Beauty said, startled, looking around for a way to escape. I think Augusta makes a good point. Of course, I'm always right, Augusta said, taking a bite out of her cake. So what do you plan to wear for the upcoming ball, princess? Asked a baroness. My blue dress, I suppose, Beauty answered. Really? The baroness said with a disappointed frown. Isn't that the dress you wore last month? Yes. A blush colored Beauty's cheeks. But I could always wear the lavender. Oh, I love that dress, said the baroness. But won't that make you and the queen look a little too similar? She has a point, Augusta said. Perhaps you could try a different shade. How about a darker blue or purple? Yes, that could work, said another woman. Beauty let out a sigh as she attempted to hide behind her teacup, letting the women work it out like always. Well, I'm not sure, said another lady. I hear that the queen is considering wearing blue herself. Really? The baroness said. That can't possibly be true. That would be quite the scandal, Augusta commented. Beauty's thoughts had begun to wander when Augusta suddenly let out a scream, pointing one shaking finger to somewhere over Beauty's shoulder. Beauty glanced back to see a massive shadow gliding across the sky towards them, flapping its gigantic wings covered in glittering green scales. Large emerald green eyes glared directly at them. Dragon! Screamed one of the women, causing them to scramble away. It's coming for me, cried Augusta as she tried to dive behind one of the chairs. Beauty froze, terror making it impossible for her to move. Princess! Someone cried, but the dragon swooped low over the table, grabbing Beauty with its claws and yanking her up into the air. Beauty's scream was ripped away from her throat as she was lifted high up into the air, her legs kicking wildly as the palace faded away. The dragon casually dropped Beauty onto a hay pile as it glided into a cave amidst towering mountains. The air was notably colder, and the cavern seemed empty, save for a scattered pile of burnt bones. Fear gripped Beauty as she hastily moved back, observing the enormous beast gracefully circling the cave, its massive wings flapping. What do you want? Beauty demanded, her voice trembling. The creature's formidable lips pulled back, revealing rows of sharp teeth as it advanced, each step resonating through the entire cave. Beauty, attempting to stand and retreat, screamed, Are you going to eat me? The creature's head recoiled, almost appearing surprised by the question. Eat you? It responded, its words echoing like a thunderstorm. Beauty's hands frantically searched for a weapon, only to clutch handfuls of hay. What else could a creature like you want? She yelled, attempting to fend it off with her makeshift hay defense. The dragon emitted a sound resembling a mix between a snort and a bark before undergoing a bizarre transformation. Its massive scales shifted into olive-toned skin, and colossal claws morphed into strong, well-manicured hands. Moments later, a tall, handsome man stood before her, long black hair cascading down his back, seemingly unbothered by the fact that he wore nothing at all. Beauty's mouth hung open. What? She finally managed to sputter, quickly fixing her eyes firmly on his face. Hello, the man said, bowing gracefully. I am Nyx. It is a pleasure to finally meet you, princess. Why? Beauty squeaked, her cheeks heating up. Why don't you have any clothes on? Does it bother you? He asked with a curious tilt of his head. Why yes. I apologize. I easily forget that you humans are bothered by such a natural state. Why? She stammered, her brain struggling to process the unreal situation. including the presence of this gorgeous stranger. "I'm sorry for the abrupt abduction," Nick said elegantly, "but it was the only way that I could bring you here." "And why did you bring me here?" Beauty asked, still keeping her eyes fixed firmly on his face. "It was the only way I could have a proper audience with you," Nick explained, his emerald eyes flashing. "And why would you want an audience with me?" "Because I plan to make you fall in love with me." Beauty fell silent as she attempted to process the ludicrousness of his words. "Your husband murdered my people," said Nick's green eyes taking on a dark glint. "I spent years thinking of the best revenge to gift him. Until finally, it came to me. I will make his precious wife fall in love with me." "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." Beauty crossed her arms and glared at him. "I would never fall in love with the likes of you. You terrified my court, kidnapped me, then dumped me in a pile of hay. How could I possibly fall in love with you?" Nick's eyes gleamed with mischief as he moved closer. "I've been watching you for a long time. You are beautiful and kind and far too sweet for that brute. It would take no effort at all to make you fall in love with me." He took hold of her hand and brought it to his lips, brushing a gentle kiss against her skin. Beauty snatched her hand away. "I have no interest in the likes of you." Nick let out a laugh, stepping back. "We'll see about that." He turned and walked towards the other side of the cave. "Where are you going?" Beauty demanded. "To find some clothes," Nick answered. "Unless you'd rather I stay like this?" "No," Beauty said, a blush coloring her cheeks. Nick smiled, his white teeth gleaming. "I'll be back," he promised. "Just wait here." "Wait," Beauty cried out. But Nick had already slipped through an opening and down a dark passage. Beauty's body sagged, all the strength leaving her. How had her day gone from terrible to utterly insane? Beauty didn't know how much time passed as she sat in the corner, her eyes darting from the entrance to the passage where Nick had disappeared. What if he never came back, leaving her trapped in this cave forever? Hopefully Charming would show up eventually. He never could resist the opportunity to slay an evil dragon or two. Beauty let out a groan, pressing her hand to her forehead and massaging her temples. "Feeling all right?" a deep voice asked, causing Beauty's head to snap up. Nick was leaning against the wall, watching her with a smirk. "How long have you been there?" Beauty asked. "Just a few moments," Nick replied, taking a few steps closer. His clothes were more subdued than Beauty expected. The shirt and pants were simply black, with no adornment, and the boots appeared well worn. "Where did you get those?" Beauty asked. "I keep a few spare outfits here," Nick said. "The townspeople don't seem to like it when I go to the market without them." Beauty's cheeks flushed. "Don't tell me you're still blushing," Nick teased. "I'm dressed now." "I'm not," Beauty insisted. "I can see the redness in your cheeks," Nick countered. "It's from anger," Beauty lied. Nick laughed, walking forward and kneeling down in front of her. "How about I show you around?" he suggested. "I'd rather you just let me go." "Oh, princess," he hummed. "I'm afraid that I can't do that. Not until I've smashed Prince Charming's heart into 1,000 pieces and left him to wallow in a puddle of his own tears." Beauty rolled her eyes. "You really want me to fall in love with you?" "It is a rather delightful thought," Nick smiled. "Wouldn't you agree?" "No," Beauty denied, her fists clenching at her side. "So, what's the plan? Are you going to force yourself on me? Beat me? Lock me away and starve me until I do what you want?" "I have no need to force myself on you. I intend to woo you. And if I do it properly, I won't need to lock you up. You'll want to stay." Beauty let out a frustrated groan. This man was insane. Utterly insane. "Fine," Beauty said. "If I play along with your game, will you let me go?" "No," Nick said. "You won't let me go even if I fall in love with you?" "Of course not," Nick said. "I'd never give up on my lovely princess. I'm not yours. Yet." Beauty groaned, pressing her hands to her face and wondering why she had been so unlucky as to be caught up in this mess. She didn't know if Charming even loved her at all anymore. He was probably tangled up with one of the court ladies at that very moment. "Charming cares little for me," said Beauty. "He's always flirting with other women and spending more time with them than he does me." So, you won't succeed," Beauty snapped. "Charming doesn't care for me at all. He doesn't even notice when I'm gone. But you are his wife, the legendary sleeping beauty that hundreds of men died trying to save. My beauty was the only thing he ever cared about. Once I was a novelty, but now I'm nothing but a breeding machine. There is nothing left in our relationship, and if there was, it would make no difference. But you still love him?" "I do." "Then, I will just have to steal your heart from him." Beauty sighed, her gaze drifting over Nick's in a way she hadn't let herself look at anyone in years. There was something undeniably magnetic about him. Just the thought of it was enough to make her flush. Enough, she told herself. If Charming didn't give a damn about her, Then why was she constantly trying to remain so loyal to him? She was outside the palace and there was no one there to judge her. Why not take something that she wanted for the first time in her life? Starting with the handsome man before her who was so eagerly offering. "Show me," Beauty demanded, looking Nyx straight in the eyes. "Show you what, dear princess? Prove to me that you're worth the trouble." "What?" Charming never once cared whether I wanted any of it, Beauty confessed. To him I was a duty to be seen to, nothing more. "If you truly mean to win me, then show me what it's like to actually be wanted." "That's quite the request." A slow smile spread across his lips. "Well, I don't expect anything less." Nyx's smile grew, his teeth gleaming as he reached out and drew her close. Beauty's gasp was swallowed by his kiss, hard and searching, nothing at all like the perfunctory affection she had grown so used to. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Beauty stopped thinking about duty, about Charming, about the woman she was supposed to be, and simply let herself want. The cave and the cold and the rest of the world fell away around them. Afterward, they lay tangled in the straw, both of them breathing hard. Beauty's heart pounded, her head spinning. She hadn't expected it to feel like that, so unlike the cold, hurried nights with Charming that had always left her feeling like furniture. "So, princess," said Nyx, a lazy smile on his lips, "was it everything you hoped for?" Beauty studied him. This ridiculous, infuriating, beautiful creature who had plucked her out of her gilded cage and dropped her into a pile of hay. "I haven't decided yet," she said, lifting her chin. "You may have to convince me all over again." Nyx laughed, low and warm, the sound filling the cave. "As my princess commands." Beauty settled back into the straw, a small, traitorous smile tugging at her lips. Help would come for her eventually, she was certain of it. Charming never could resist slaying a dragon. But until then, she saw no reason at all not to enjoy the company of her handsome dragon shifter. Chapter 2. Beauty sighed as she kicked a bone by her foot. It had been 3 days since the kidnapping, and she was still trapped in the dragon's mountain cave. She passed the hours by chewing on raw vegetables and lounging around on mounds of hay, poking her head out the giant opening every once in a while to check for a rescue. Beauty had a sneaking suspicion that Charming wasn't in a hurry to bring her back. He was probably too busy entertaining the court ladies in their marital bed. The loud flapping of wings caused Beauty to jolt to attention, her heart racing in her chest. Nyx dove through an opening in the cave, his large green dragon body moving through the air with ease. There was a screaming sheep firmly clenched in his long claws, struggling to escape. He tossed the poor creature to the ground and set it alight with a mouthful of fire, and soon the scent of roasting lamb filled the cave. Beauty gagged, pressing her hands to her nose. "Hungry?" Nyx asked, deep voice echoing off the stone walls. Beauty shook her head. Nyx shrugged and tore into the carcass, snapping bones with his massive teeth as he hungrily wolfed the meal down. "When are you going to let me go?" Beauty asked. Nyx swallowed a mouthful of meat. "Why would I do that? You're far too lovely to part with." Beauty's cheeks burned and she glared at him. "So that's all I am to you? A pretty face and a means to an end. Well, there is the added bonus of destroying your husband's happiness." Nyx stretched his long tail. "That's the biggest reason why I keep you here." Beauty huffed and looked away, glaring at the far wall. "You seem upset, princess." Nyx stepped forward, the ground vibrating beneath his feet. "Of course I am," Beauty snapped. "I'm a prisoner." "You didn't seem to mind my company a few nights ago," he said, a smirk in his voice. "That's because..." Beauty bit her lip. Letting him get close had been a mistake. All she had wanted was to experience life beyond Charming for once, but she'd only made the dragon more reluctant to ever let her go. "Because you can't resist me," Nyx finished. "No," Beauty snapped. "That was just to pass the time." "Pass the time? Is that what pretty princesses do when they're bored?" "Yes. All the royal women spend their days being groomed to produce heirs and little else. It's a well-known fact." That's very interesting. I would love to learn more," he purred, leaning close, his breath hot against her cheek. Beauty gasped and stepped back. "Stop it," Beauty huffed. "Or what?" Nyx challenged. You'll what?" Nyx leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "Tell me, princess, what will you do?" Beauty didn't know. She was trapped. He had kidnapped her. She couldn't escape and no one would be coming for her. She was stuck. Stuck with an infuriating dragon whose company she had, to her great annoyance, enjoyed far too much a few nights earlier. Her heart raced as his warm breath ghosted over her skin, and she hated how aware of him she was. "You already want me," he said, low and certain. "So why not simply let yourself enjoy it?" Beauty bit her lip. 3 days of staring at cave walls, of telling herself she regretted what they'd done, and the truth was she hadn't stopped thinking about it once. Or perhaps I should leave you here to stew in your frustration, he teased, beginning to turn away. No, Beauty said softly. What was that, princess? He teased. No. Don't, Beauty breathed. Nyx grinned, his eyes gleaming. As my princess wishes. He drew her down into the hay, and the cave and the cold and every last reason she had to resist him melted away. Afterward, Nyx shifted back into his handsome human form and wrapped his large arms around Beauty, pulling her close. Beauty's breath caught in her throat. His hands stroked her back, slow and unhurried. His warm body pressed against hers. She bit her lip, trying to prevent herself from smiling. Don't you love me more than charming now? Nyx murmured, burying his face in her hair. Beauty huffed, shaking her head. No, but that arrogant prince will never make you feel the way I can, he chuckled. Beauty couldn't quite deny the truth in his words. And I will always be here, he added. However you wish. Beauty shivered, her eyes sliding closed. Just be quiet. Nyx let out a laugh. Whatever you wish, my princess. He cradled her against him, his warm breath tickling her neck. Beauty sighed, snuggling against him, her eyelids fluttering shut. She felt safe, secure, comfortable, but she swore to never give him her heart. Chapter 3. What is that? Beauty asked as she glared at the gaudy dress in Nyx's claws. It was hideously purple and covered in far too much lace that was burnt at the edges, no doubt by his mouth. Nyx set the dress down on the ground before her. A gift for you, princess. No. Beauty crossed her arms over her chest. I refuse to take any gifts from you. Nyx curiously cocked his head. But I thought that women love gifts. Don't men give them to you when they want you to like them? Yes, but they usually give nicer things, like jewelry or flowers. Beauty remembered the days when Charming used to make an effort. He lavished her with expensive presents. Necklaces, dresses, shoes, anything she wanted. After living humbly in the forest for so long, she had greedily accepted them. Beauty shook the memories from her mind. But giving expensive presents might impress someone at first. But Beauty was interrupted by Nyx flapping his wings and gliding out of the cave. He returned moments later with fistfuls of sparkling jewelry that he dumped at her feet. Jewels, he growled, his green eyes bright with excitement. They are very beautiful. Beauty kneeled down to pick up a gold necklace. It had an emerald pendant surrounded by diamonds. Now do you love me? Nyx asked. No, Beauty snapped, throwing the necklace back down. These are pretty, but no amount of gold in the world would ever make me love you. Then how do I make you love me? You can't. People's real emotions aren't something that you can buy with presents. Nyx huffed, his nostrils flaring. Then how do I show my affection for you? You can start by letting me go, Beauty said, pointing a finger at his snout. Not happening, he said, baring his sharp teeth. Then we have a problem, Beauty snapped. Why can't you be happy here? You have me. And what am I supposed to do? Stay here and entertain you all day? I have people who depend on me back home. I can't, he said, shaking his large head. Not until I've had my revenge on your husband. But why me? Why not just attack him yourself? Nyx let out a noseful of steam. Death is not enough for that brute. I want him to suffer as I have, to watch what he loves most in the world get stolen away, never to return. Beauty rolled her eyes. It was the same answer that he'd given her several times already. Nyx lowered himself to the cave floor and rolled onto his back, stretching his long body out, staring straight at Beauty like he expected something to happen. What are you doing? She asked, offering myself to you. You always seem happiest in my company. Beauty blushed and looked away, biting her lip. He wasn't entirely wrong. They had grown close more than once since that first night, and she couldn't pretend she hadn't enjoyed it. I can't, she muttered. We shouldn't be doing this. Why not? He growled. Because, Beauty mumbled. I'm still angry with you. But you can still enjoy my company, he countered. It's never stopped you before. He did have a point. Beauty sighed, and the truth was that 3 days of pretending she didn't want him had worn her down. Fine, she muttered, crossing to him. And despite every reason not to, she let herself be drawn back to him, the cave and her anger and her better judgment all slipping away. That was intense, she whispered afterward, her heart still pounding in her chest. It was, he agreed, his eyes sliding closed. Beauty sat down beside him. Her mind felt warm and hazy, her limbs tingling. She was happy, content, relaxed. Nyx rolled over and got to his feet. Come, he rumbled. There is somewhere that I want to show you. Beauty instantly regretted her decision the moment that Nyx took to the sky. She clung to the scales on his back in terror, watching the ground get smaller as they climbed higher and higher. "I want to go back," Beauty shouted, her stomach churning. "It's just a little further." Nyx's voice boomed through the clouds. Beauty swallowed, her throat dry. Her stomach twisted as the dragon banked, flying through a dark cloud, the wind whipping her hair. "Please stop," Beauty screamed, her body shaking. Nyx ignored her, diving through the mist. Her breath caught in her throat, her eyes wide with fear as the clouds cleared and they entered a vast, open space. "Look down, princess," Nyx said, his voice soft. Beauty shook her head. "Come now, I won't let you fall," Nyx coaxed. "No," Beauty insisted, keeping her face pressed against his warm scales. "Fine." Nyx dipped a wing and they dove, dropping straight down. "Oh my God!" Beauty shrieked, holding on for dear life. "Don't worry," Nyx said calmly. "I know what I'm doing." "Then stop," she yelled. "Okay." He pulled up, the air rushing around them as his wings beat faster, propelling them upwards. The cloud dissipated and Beauty blinked in the bright sunlight. "We're here," he said. Beauty's eyes widened. Before them stood a giant castle made of white stone, surrounded by tall turrets and thick walls. Stained glass windows shimmered in the sun, reflecting rainbows across the courtyard. "What is this place?" Beauty asked, her mouth hanging open. "My old home? It's beautiful." "It was," Nyx said softly as they landed on the ground. Beauty slid off the dragon's back. Nyx reverted back to his human form as soon as her feet hit the ground, green scales changing back to smooth tan skin. "You must have been wealthy," Beauty said, admiring the large structure. "No, my family were more like servants." Nyx ran a hand through his thick dark hair, brushing it away from his face. "Would you like to see inside?" "Can we?" "Of course." Nyx took Beauty's hand. "I want you to see where I lived." They walked across the vast courtyard, passing rows of overgrown flowers and crumbling statues. The front doors were carved from marble, depicting two dragons fighting. Nyx pushed the doors open, revealing a large entrance hall. Beauty gasped, taking in the lavish decor. The floor was made of polished marble, the walls covered in intricate mosaics. Overturned wooden tables and chairs lay scattered throughout the room. "It was so beautiful," Nyx murmured, his dark eyes shining with sadness. Beauty glanced over the shattered windows and scorch marks on the floor. "What happened here?" "Prince Charming and his father," Nyx said through clenched teeth. "His whole family have waged war against dragonkind for generations." "They did this?" "Yes. Killed almost everyone, including my whole family." Beauty stared at the ruined hall. "I'm so sorry." Nyx shook his head, turning away from the devastation. "I should be the one who is sorry." "What? This is all my fault." Nyx's voice cracked. "No, it's not." "Yes, it is." His shoulders sagged. "I should have been here to protect them." "There was nothing you could have done," Beauty said softly, touching his shoulder. "I was gone," Nyx growled. "I went off to travel the world despite my family's wishes, and when I came back, this was all that awaited me." "You couldn't have known, but if I'd stayed, then you'd be dead," Beauty said firmly. "Maybe I should be," Nyx sighed. "At least then I could be with them." "Don't say that. Your family wouldn't want you to die. You didn't know them, but I know that if they really cared about you, then they'd want you to live." "What about you, princess?" Nyx curiously cocked his head. "Do you want me to live? If I were to throw myself off this cliff, there would be nothing stopping you from returning home." "That's not what I meant." Beauty frowned. "Just because I'm not happy with you, doesn't mean that I want you to die." "So you do care?" Nyx grinned, his green eyes twinkling. "That's not what I'm saying," Beauty huffed. "But it is." Nyx stepped closer, towering over her. "You have feelings for me." "I do not." "Yes, you do. Admit it, princess. You like me." "I most certainly do not." "Prove it." "It's obvious." "I don't need to prove it." Nyx walked around the room until he found a large shard of glass, returning to Beauty's side and carefully handing it to her. "Kill me," he said. "If you have no feelings for me, then you should have no problem slitting my throat." "What?" "No," Beauty cried, stepping away from him. "Why not?" Nyx challenged. "Isn't that what you want? To escape me? Then take your chance. I won't stop you." "It's a stupid test," Beauty protested, throwing the shard on the ground. "So you do have feelings for me," he purred. "No, I don't." "Yes, you do. This is stupid." Beauty spun on her heels, angrily storming out of the room. "Princess," Nyx called after her. "Wait." Beauty ignored him, walking towards the gates. He was insane. There was no way that she had any feelings for him. She was kidnapped, Held prisoner. Used as a pawn to get revenge on Charming. She would never come to love him. Princess. Beauty froze, her hands balling into fists. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to upset you. Beauty kept walking, her heart pounding in her chest. Please, he begged. Don't leave me alone. Beauty turned to face him, seeing pain and grief in his eyes. Stay, he said. There's still more that I want to show you. Beauty ground her teeth together. She knew that she should turn and walk away, but a part of her didn't want to. A part of her wanted to stay and comfort him, to take his pain away. She was a fool. Every time that she tried to be kind, she only got hurt in the end. Fine, she said. But no more talk about murder or dying. Nyx's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you, Princess. This was once the Queen's favorite place to relax, said Nyx as they entered a ruined rose garden. Overgrown hedges towered over them. Vines snaked through the crumbling stone paths, and roses were everywhere, growing wild and free. It's beautiful, Beauty said. My mother was the gardener here. Nyx led Beauty past a broken fountain. She would spend hours out here tending to the flowers. Beauty looked around, the vibrant colors reminding her of the forest where she grew up. It's incredible, she whispered. It was. Nyx stopped and plucked a red rose from a vine. Here, he said, holding it out to her. Beauty took the flower, carefully avoiding the thorns. Thank you. Nyx smiled. It reminds me of you. How? You're both beautiful with a sharp side. Is that supposed to be a good thing? Definitely. Beauty couldn't stop herself from blushing. She tried to keep her gaze on his face, but found it wandering all the same. Nyx smiled at her. You're so beautiful. He reached out to stroke her cheek. I've never seen anyone as pretty as you. Beauty swallowed hard. Nyx took hold of her jaw, tilting her face up to meet his lips. Their mouths came together, soft at first and then not. He tasted like salt and fire, a dangerous treat that she couldn't get enough of. Beauty kissed him back, her arms wrapping around his neck, pulling him closer, taking all that she wanted and more. She could feel his muscles flexing as he pressed against her, his strong hands holding her steady. God, Princess, he groaned, his fingers digging into her hips. His kisses grew more urgent, his mouth demanding. Let me have you here, he murmured, his lips leaving a trail down her neck. I want to make love to you amongst all the roses. Beauty's eyes fluttered closed. Yes, she breathed. Take me. Gladly, he murmured, gathering her into his arms and carrying her deeper into the garden, laying her gently down on a soft blanket of moss surrounded by fragrant flowers. And there, amongst the wild roses his mother had once tended, Beauty let the last of her resistance slip quietly away. Afterward, they lay together, neither speaking, their eyes fixed on the blue sky above. I think that I love you, Princess, Nyx said quietly. Do you love me now? No, Beauty whispered, but she wasn't sure if those words were entirely true. Chapter 4. Beauty wiped the sweat from her brow, surveying the room around her. All the broken glass had been swept from the floor and the tables and chairs had been set upright, restoring some semblance of order. Beauty leaned against the wall, her muscles aching. The past few days had been hard. Ever since arriving at the castle, Nyx had become quiet and withdrawn, spending most of his time in his dragon form, flying over the ruins or sleeping. It was clear that the pain of losing his family weighed heavily on his mind. Beauty chose to leave him be, amusing herself by cleaning the castle. She didn't have the courage to venture into the more blood-stained rooms, but she was determined to restore the main hall to its former glory. Beauty placed down her broom, walking through two large wooden doors to venture further into the castle. Birds chirped from the rafters and sunlight poured in from the broken windows, casting an eerie glow across the dust-covered furniture. Beauty wandered the corridors, admiring what was left of the paintings and tapestries. She stumbled upon a grand staircase carved from white marble, a thick layer of grime covering the steps. Beauty climbed to the top, finding herself in a vast corridor with several rooms on either side. She pushed open the nearest door, and the air that met her was cold and stale. What she saw made her stomach turn. Chains hung from the ceiling, and a heavy iron frame stood at the center of the room, fitted with rusted shackles. Mirrors lined the walls, throwing her own uneasy reflection back at her from every angle. "Beauty?" called Nyx's voice from somewhere below. "In here," she called back, though she could not bring herself to look away from the grim shapes around her. Moments later Nyx appeared in the doorway. The instant he saw the room, his face darkened. "You shouldn't be in here," he said quietly. "What is this place?" Beauty asked, her voice small. Nyx's jaw tightened. "It belonged to the prince. He used to bring women here, from the villages. His hands curled into fists at his sides. He was cruel to them. Crueler than I will ever say aloud. Beauty wrapped her arms around herself, a chill running through her despite the warmth of the day. "That's monstrous," she whispered. "It is why I will never be sorry for what became of his family," Nick said, his voice low and rough. "Come. There is nothing in this room worth a single moment of your time." He took her hand and drew her out, pulling the heavy door shut behind them and sealing the awful place away. Later, when the sun had dipped low and painted the ruined halls in gold, Beauty found Nyx out among the wild roses again, the grief still sitting heavy on his shoulders. She went to him without quite deciding to. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, and whatever he saw in her face made his own soften. For a long while neither of them spoke of the dead, or the past, or the husband waiting somewhere beyond the mountains. He gathered her close, and there was only the two of them and the hush of the evening and the unfamiliar comfort of being wanted by someone who looked at her as though she were the only thing left in the world. Afterward, Beauty lay curled against him as the first stars appeared above the broken towers. Her body was warm, her mind quiet, and she felt more at peace than she had in longer than she could remember. "Forgive me, Princess," Nyx murmured into her hair. She wasn't certain what he was apologizing for. Perhaps for taking her from her home. Perhaps for letting himself feel something he had only ever meant to use as a weapon against Charming. "Hush," she said sleepily, and let herself drift off, safe in the circle of his arms, too tired to wonder what either of them was becoming. Chapter 5. The sound of birds singing woke Beauty from her slumber. She sat up and stretched, her mind groggy and her limbs aching. She glanced around the room, her heart stopping when she noticed a pair of bright green eyes watching her from the corner. Nyx was in his human form, sitting on a plush armchair beside the bed. He looked tired, his skin paler than usual and his hair disheveled. "Hey," she greeted awkwardly, her voice hoarse. Nyx rose to his feet and crossed the room to stand before her. "Are you all right, Princess?" "I'm fine," Beauty muttered, her eyes scanning their surroundings. They were in a large stone bedchamber overlooking the flower garden. Nyx smiled slightly. "I got carried away last night," he said quietly. "I was worried that I may have hurt you." "You didn't," she said. "I'm all right, truly." Nyx frowned, his brow furrowing. "Still, I am sorry. I think it's best that I remain in my human form from now on." Beauty shook her head. "You don't have to do that. I want to." Nyx knelt down beside the bed and took her hand in his. "For you, Princess." Beauty bit her lower lip. It was times like this that it was easy to forget that she was his prisoner, that he was a beast who had kidnapped her. "Do you still feel it?" Beauty asked. "Yes," Nyx murmured. "But it's a lot weaker in my human form. I can keep myself in check this way. But if I shift, I'm not always sure I can." Nyx ran his fingers over the back of Beauty's hand. "There's something that I should tell you." "What?" "Us dragons, we weren't always kind to humans," Nyx said, his voice low. "The king's brother was a cruel creature. He used to take women from the villages, and I won't speak aloud of what he did to them. It was monstrous, and he was never once made to answer for it." Beauty shuddered, suddenly feeling nauseous. "The king turned a blind eye," said Nyx, "and the queen didn't care, thinking that they were too strong and powerful to ever lose against humans." "That's horrible," Beauty whispered. "I've seen what our kind is capable of." Nyx lowered his gaze. "Human women are fragile, and a dragon, when its instincts take hold, is not always gentle. I have seen the harm it can do." Beauty stared at Nyx's face, wondering how someone so kind and gentle could possibly hurt her. "Perhaps it's best if dragonkind ends with me," Nyx sighed. "I'd rather die alone than see one of my own ever harm a human woman that way." Beauty placed her palm against Nyx's cheek, running her thumb along his stubble. "I can't imagine a child of yours ever doing anything like that. And yet, last night, I felt how easily I could lose myself." Nyx kissed the inside of Beauty's wrist. "It frightened me." "You didn't hurt me," Beauty said softly. "I'm here. I'm fine. I don't blame you for any of it." Nyx's eyes were glassy, tears pooling on his lower lids. "I thought you would hate me. After last night." "I don't hate you," Beauty replied. "You are truly kind." "Not really." Beauty brushed the pad of her thumb under Nyx's eyes, wiping away the tears. "I have my own selfish side too." Nyx sniffled and pressed his face against Beauty's hand. Beauty leaned forward and kissed his forehead. "Thank you, Princess." Beauty's lips found Nyx's and they shared a slow, sweet kiss. It was meant to be simple and chaste, but it quickly became something more. For all his fear of losing control, he was careful with her now, tender in a way Charming had never once been. And she found, to her own quiet surprise, that she didn't want him to stop. The morning light spilled warm across the bed, and the rest of the world fell away. Afterward, Beauty lay tracing the lines of his face, his long eyelashes, his sharp nose, his defined chin. If only it had been him who had kissed her awake all those years ago, she thought, instead of Prince Charming. Nyx rested his head between her breasts, and she ran her fingers through his long hair, enjoying the rare moment of peace that had settled between them. "Nyx," she said softly, "please let me go home." Nyx's grip tightened around her. "I miss my children," Beauty continued, "and this way of getting revenge on Charming won't work. He stopped loving me a long time ago." Nyx nuzzled against her. "How can anyone not love you, Princess?" "I don't know," Beauty sighed. "That's something that only he can explain." Nyx went silent, as though turning her words over. "Tomorrow," he finally said. "Let's please just talk about this tomorrow." "Okay," she said softly, running her fingers through his hair as he settled against her. "Thank you, Princess," he mumbled sleepily, but Beauty could feel the tears leaking from his eyes. Chapter 6. The next morning, Nyx was nowhere to be found. He had slipped away before sunrise, as if dreading the conversation he knew they needed to have. Beauty could sense his motivation to keep her captive had faded. Revisiting the place where his family perished had clearly stirred something within him. She sighed as she idly dusted the same vase for the 7th time. Although he had kidnapped her against her will, she couldn't help but feel sympathy for him and his tragic situation. A sudden crash from downstairs shattered her thoughts. "Hello?" Beauty called out, dropping the duster and stepping into the hallway. "Nyx?" The sound of heavy boots thudding against stone echoed from the entrance hall, accompanied by the clang of metal weapons. Beauty let the vase slip from her hands, shattering on the floor as she rushed down the corridor, unsure if the intruders were friend or foe. The last thing she needed were bandits coming to pillage the remnants of the Dragon Kingdom. "There she is!" cried one soldier as he appeared at the top of the stairs, brandishing a shield painted with Charming's family crest. Beauty stopped, shoulders sagging with relief, as several more of Charming's soldiers dashed towards her. "Are you okay, Princess?" one asked, gaze roaming over her worn dress and wild appearance. "We feared the worst." "I'm fine," she assured him, "just in need of a decent bath." "Did the monster harm you?" Another asked. "No," Beauty replied, gaze falling to the floor. "He didn't." The soldiers exchanged worried looks. "You're safe now, Princess," one said gently. "We caught the monster who did this to you." Beauty's blood froze. "Caught him? Where?" "Outside." "Take me to him," she demanded. The men obeyed without hesitation. As Beauty entered the garden, she spotted Nyx on his knees, bound and gagged, his body battered. Before him stood Charming with several of his men, the prince casually swinging a heavy club over his shoulder. "My father was an idiot for assuming that every last dragon was dead," said Charming with a wicked smile. "But I knew that I'd find you all eventually." Beauty's breath caught in her throat as she watched the soldiers shove Nyx roughly, making him grunt through the gag. "Stop!" Beauty cried, rushing to Nyx's side. "This is too cruel." "There you are," Charming said with a brilliant smile. "My darling wife." Beauty's insides twisted with revulsion at his words. "I've been worried sick," Charming continued. "Thank the gods we found you alive before this monster had his way with you." Nyx glared daggers at Charming, his chest heaving. "What's the matter?" Charming taunted. "Can't say anything?" The soldiers chuckled. "That's enough," Beauty cried. "You've done enough. Let's just leave him and go back to the castle." "Leave him?" Charming laughed like she was mad. "There's no way that I can allow the monster that stole my wife to roam free. We'll hold a public execution for the whole kingdom to see the last dragon beheaded." "No," Beauty cried. "He didn't hurt me. He's just confused." "Confused? Oh, poor Beauty," Charming sighed. "You've allowed your poor naive mind to be corrupted by a monster once more." "Please, Charming," Beauty begged, grasping his arm. "Just let him live. I promise that he won't hurt anyone." "Idiot," Charming hissed, pushing Beauty towards a soldier. "This monster has clearly poisoned your mind. Guards, take her away." Two men nodded and took hold of Beauty, carrying her towards a waiting carriage. She tried her best to fight them off, watching as the other soldiers wrapped chains around Nyx's body, but she was soon shoved into the carriage before she could do anything. "No!" Beauty screamed, trying to open the door, but a bolt slid in place, making any attempt at escape impossible. Beauty spent the next hour in tears. She finally had the freedom that she desired, but she didn't want it to come at the expense of Nyx's life. She heard the soldiers outside chatter amongst themselves, laughing about what awaited Nyx once they got back to the castle. She knew from their conversations that Nyx hadn't put up much of a fight. that he barely fought back when Charming's mages bound and gagged him so that he couldn't transform, almost as though he wanted them to end his life. "How goes it, dear wife?" said Charming as he slipped into Beauty's carriage after nightfall. "Still want me to let the monster go?" Beauty crossed her arms, silently glaring at him. "Don't be like that," Charming laughed, throwing an arm around Beauty's shoulder. "You should be more grateful that I walked up this frigid mountain to rescue you." Beauty relaxed in his hold. He was right. He'd gone out of his way to free her, and she'd done nothing but treat him and his men coldly. Charming rested a hand on her thigh. "I kinda like it." His warm breath brushed her ear. "This tortured prisoner look reminds me of when I found you dancing away alone in the forest." His lips were on her neck before she knew it, his hands roaming where they pleased. Beauty closed her eyes and let it happen. She had no desire for his touch, but after the day she'd had, arguing felt like more than she could bear, and it was easier, always easier, to simply let Charming have his way and be done with it. He was quick and careless, as he always was, taking what he wanted with no thought for her at all. It was nothing like the quiet nights in the cave had been. He was asleep soon after, leaving Beauty staring dry-eyed at the carriage ceiling, feeling more alone beside her husband than she ever had as a prisoner. Nyx may have effortlessly glided over the mountains, but the journey back to the castle would take days on foot. The first few evenings they camped, but on the third night they finally reached a small town. Charming and his men couldn't resist celebrating their victory at the tavern, downing round after round as the locals fawned over their prince, congratulating him on his victory over the fearsome beast who dared kidnap the princess. Beauty hid in her room, not the least bit eager to see Charming pawing at another village woman behind the bar. Beauty couldn't sleep, her heart racing as she waited for Charming to pass out in a stranger's bed. She tossed and turned for hours, waiting until the moon was high in the sky and the snores of drunken soldiers could be heard through the walls. She slipped out of bed and pulled on one of Charming's thick coats, fumbling with the door lock until she silently opened it. She glanced left and right down the corridor, making sure no guards were nearby. She held her breath and carefully stepped out of the room, her heart pounding and palms sweating. She kept her footsteps light and quiet, sneaking down the dark halls and staircases, then out the back door of the tavern. Several soldiers lay passed out in the courtyard, snoring away the alcohol. Beauty tiptoed past them, keeping her distance until she reached the stables. Nyx was still in his cage, lying on the floor with his back facing the door. He had barely moved since his capture. Beauty crouched next to the cage, reaching through the bars and touching his arm. "Nyx," she whispered. Nyx turned his head, blinking at her. "Princess?" "I'm sorry," Beauty whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "I'm sorry that they did this to you." "It's all right, Princess," he sighed, rolling onto his back, wincing in pain. "It's what I deserve." "It's not." Beauty's vision blurred as her tears fell. "What you did was wrong, but you don't deserve this. I know that you're a good person deep down, even if you don't believe it yourself." Nyx frowned. "Why are you crying?" "Because I don't want you to die." Beauty sobbed. "Princess." Nyx's face softened. "Please," Beauty begged. "I know that you're strong. I know that you can get yourself out of this." "I'm sorry, Princess, but I can't." "You can." Beauty sniffled, wiping her tears. "I know that you can. Please don't give up." Nyx stared at her for a long time, his green eyes studying her face, the corners of his mouth tugging down into a frown. "I can't," he said quietly. "Why?" "I'm afraid." "Of what?" "Of myself," Nyx whispered. "Why?" "Because I don't know if I can control the instinct once I've transformed." Beauty shook her head. "It doesn't matter. Please, Nyx, please save yourself while you still have the chance." Nyx's jaw clenched. "Please," she begged. He sighed heavily and slowly got to his feet, grunting and wincing from the pain. He closed his eyes, concentrating hard, his expression turning to a grimace. Suddenly his body began to shimmer, his limbs twisting and stretching as he shifted into his true form, the chains binding him cracking and splitting apart, falling to the floor. The cage bent and then tore apart against his weight. Beauty watched in awe as Nyx's massive body expanded to its full size, towering over her, his tail swishing from side to side. He leaned down and nuzzled her cheek, purring softly, his warm breath tickling her skin. Beauty laughed softly and kissed his snout, her tears flowing freely. "Thank you." Nyx let out a low growl and licked the tears off Beauty's cheeks. "He's escaped," cried a soldier as he burst into the barn. With a low growl, Nyx scooped Beauty up with his claws and took to the air. The soldier's screams faded away as Nyx flew across the darkened sky, heading towards a nearby mountain. He landed in a clearing among a grove of trees, setting Beauty on her feet. "Princess," His deep voice rumbled. His head affectionately nuzzled hers, his sharp teeth softly grazing her cheek. "Nix," Beauty hummed back, leaning into him as he gently guided her back against a smooth rock. For a while there in the moonlit grove, with the danger behind them and the quiet of the night wrapped around them, there was only the two of them, and Beauty let herself have this, whatever it was, one last time without letting herself think about what came after. Afterward, Nix held her close, his great chest heaving, and nuzzled her affectionately, pressing his nose against hers. "Princess," he purred, "please don't forget me." "Forget you?" She looked up at him, brow knitting with confusion. "How could I? Please remember these nicer moments," Nix said softly as his body shrunk, transforming until he was human. "Not just the memories of me ripping you away from your home." Beauty reached forward, running her fingers across his soft cheek. "I will." Too soon, Nix pulled his hand away, leaving Beauty feeling empty. His jaw clenched as he fought back emotion. "Take care of yourself, princess." His voice shook, thick with sorrow he couldn't hide. "Nix?" Beauty's brow furrowed with confusion and dread. This felt too final, too much like a permanent goodbye. He took a step back from her, then another, creating distance. Beauty instinctively reached for him, but her hands grasped nothing but air. In the blink of an eye, his massive leathery wings unfurled and powerful haunches expanded. When the dazzling transformation completed, the towering dragon filled her view once more. "Nix! Wait!" Beauty cried out in anguish as he turned and launched himself into the sky with a few mighty flaps of his wings. But her pleas were drowned out by the thunderous downdrafts. Beauty could only watch helplessly as Nix climbed higher and higher until the darkness of night swallowed him whole. Sobs shook her body as the devastating truth set in. He was leaving her behind. Tears blurred her sight, but she stubbornly kept her eyes trained on the empty patch of sky where he had vanished, hoping that he might return. As the first rays of dawn crept over the horizon, staining the sky in pale pinks and blues, the awful reality finally sank in. Nix was gone and he wasn't coming back. Chapter 7. Beauty forced herself to put one foot in front of the other, slowly making her way down the mountain. She could see the city in the distance, but she'd get there faster if she stopped breaking down to cry. She felt like a fool. Nix had held her hostage, but she couldn't help feeling like he'd ripped out a piece of her heart and taken it with him. They were supposed to be complete opposites. He was a monstrous dragon, and she was a human woman, but she felt closer to him than she ever had with Charming. The guards sounded the alarm the moment that Beauty approached the palace. Her mother rushed out to greet her, still dressed in her nightwear. "Beauty, is that you?" cried the elderly woman, throwing her arms around her daughter. "Beauty, oh, thank God you're alive." "Of course, I'm alive, Mother," Beauty sighed, holding her mother's frail body tightly and squeezing her eyes shut, trying to block out the stares from the guards around them. "Where are my children?" "In bed, sleeping," the Queen said. "How did you escape from that terrible creature?" "It's a long story," Beauty murmured, too tired to think up a version of the truth that wouldn't shock her mother. "Of course, my dear," her mother cooed. "Come inside. We can talk once you've had some proper rest." Charming was in a foul mood once he returned. He and his men spent days searching for any sign of Nix, only to come back empty-handed. "This is ridiculous," Charming shouted while kicking a chair. "No one can hide from us. Not even a dragon." "Perhaps he went over the ocean, Your Highness," one of his men replied. "That would make him a coward," Charming scoffed. "The moment that he sets foot in this land again, I'm taking his head." Charming's mood only improved once it was discovered that Beauty was pregnant. "This time it must be a son," he smiled proudly as he looked over her growing belly. "We'll raise him to be the best prince that our kingdom has ever known." Beauty smiled half-heartedly. She had no way of knowing if the child was really Charming's. She and Nix had been together many times, and she didn't know whether it was even possible for a dragon to father a human woman's child. Even after the child was born, Beauty found it difficult to tell who the father was. He had inherited Beauty's long blonde hair and pale skin, but the rest of his face was still too infantile to discern his parentage. His birth was celebrated throughout the kingdom. The king and queen threw a grand party to celebrate the new heir to the throne. Beauty watched her mother doting on the baby, cooing and singing to him, her smile wide and bright. "What are you going to name him, darling?" the queen asked Edward. Charming beamed, rushing forward to scoop up his son. "He will be known as Prince Edward, the greatest ruler our kingdom has ever known." Beauty could do nothing but nod, watching as her family planned out her son's life before her. "And I will take you hunting," the king added. "We can show him the joys of the forest and teach him how to ride." "I think that's a wonderful idea," the queen chimed in. "We can have his horse prepared for him." Perhaps a black stallion. What do you think, Beauty? Charming asked. Beauty's gaze moved from her son to the crowd of people around her. The nobles and servants gathered to witness her son's christening, all eager to catch a glimpse of the little prince. Her heart ached as she caught sight of a man standing at the back of the hall, his face hidden beneath a dark hood, a pair of sharp green eyes glinting beneath the shadow of the cowl. She opened her mouth, the words on the tip of her tongue, but before she could speak, the man vanished into the crowd. Perhaps her longing for Nyx was making her see him in the faces of others. Her son began fussing in Charming's arms, wailing and kicking his little legs. The prince tried to soothe him, bouncing him gently, but the cries only grew more shrill and ear-splitting. Then, before everyone's astonished eyes, the baby prince began to change. His soft blonde hair became tough, green scales. His pudgy hands and feet morphed into sharp talons. Leathery wings erupted from his back, sending royal garments and linens flying. Within moments, the tiny human infant had transformed into a snarling dragon hatchling. Screams erupted through the great hall. Nobles scattered in fear as the baby dragon thrashed in Charming's arms, swiping at him with its claws and snapping its jaws. Sorcery! Someone cried out. The prince is bewitched. Kill it! Shouted another. Kill the monster! Charming staggered backward, nearly dropping the dragon, which wriggled free from his grip and flapped its wings, lifting off the ground. It soared toward the ceiling, shrieking and spitting sparks. Beauty gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Her legs felt numb. Her blood turned to ice. No! She cried, lunging forward. She reached out, trying to grab the dragon, but it slipped through her grasp. She ran after it, chasing it around the hall, weaving between fleeing guests. Someone catch it! She screamed. Her cries fell on deaf ears. Everyone was too busy fleeing the room in terror. Please, help me, she begged, stumbling as her ankle twisted under her. She tripped and fell hard on her knees. The pain shot up her legs, but she gritted her teeth and forced herself to keep running. She chased her dragon son into the courtyard. He flew higher and higher, spiraling toward the sun. She stopped, staring up at it, tears welling in her eyes. Wait, she called. Come back, please. Beauty collapsed to her knees in the courtyard, sobbing as she watched her son soar higher and higher into the sky. It was over. Even if he did come back, Charming would only have him killed. An enormous shadow passed over the courtyard, blotting out the sun. Beauty gasped and shielded her eyes as an immense dragon descended from the heavens. As it landed with a thunderous crash, she recognized the emerald green scales, the sinewy muscles rippling beneath, and the piercing eyes that had haunted her dreams. Nyx! She cried out in relief. Nyx bared his teeth and unleashed a mighty roar that shook the castle walls. Beauty's dragon son screeched in response and performed an aerial loop, shooting a gout of flame that harmlessly dispersed around Nyx's thick hide. Nyx swiftly lashed out, snatching the hatchling out of the air in his massive claws. The little dragon writhed and squirmed, but was no match for his father's strength. Beauty could only gape in stunned silence as Nyx craned his neck down until his shining emerald eyes were level with hers. Part of her still recoiled in fear at this terrifying beast, but another part felt an inexplicable pull, the same magnetic attraction that had drawn her to Nyx against all reason when he held her captive. Beauty pushed herself to her feet and took a determined step towards the towering dragon. I'm ready, she said in a voice barely above a whisper. Take me with you both. Nyx's mouth parted in what might have been a draconic smile. Reaching down with one taloned foreclaw, he gently scooped Beauty up and deposited her on his broad-scaled back behind their dragon son. With a powerful downstroke of his wings, Nyx launched himself skyward, his massive body cutting through the air. Beauty clutched desperately to the hatchling in front of her as the cold winds whipped her hair. She didn't look back as the castle and kingdom she had once called home shrank beneath her. Her eyes remained fixed on the endless horizon ahead, on the future awaiting her son and the life Nyx was offering them both. Nyx carried them far from the kingdom, beyond the mountains and the reach of Charming's men, to a place where no one would ever hunt their son. That night, safe at last in a warm cavern with their child sleeping soundly nearby, Beauty went into Nyx's arms, and for the first time in longer than she could remember she felt wholly, completely wanted. The kingdom she'd left behind, the husband who'd never loved her, all of it faded away to nothing. Afterward, Nyx shifted back into his human form, and the two of them lay tangled together, breathing hard. Princess, Nyx hummed, nuzzling her hair. Not a day goes by that I don't love you. Beauty hummed contentedly and hugged him tightly. Nyx lifted her chin to look into her blue eyes. You are truly a remarkable woman, Nyx breathed with reverence. To endure all that you have, and still find it in your heart to forgive me. Beauty's hands cupped his cheeks, pulling him down for another sweet kiss. Nyx closed his eyes as he hugged Beauty to his chest. Forgive me, princess. Beauty could see the tears pooling under his eyelids. She cradled his cheek and brushed her thumb under his eye. I've already forgiven you, she murmured, placing her ear against his heart. Her eyelids fluttered closed and her body sank against him, relaxed by his strong hold. She knew that everything was going to be all right. Together they would forge a new life. Their happily ever after. Thank you for listening to Sleeping Beauty's Dragon Shifter by Beatrix. Steam Fade to Black version. Find the full version with all the spicy scenes on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. Find more spicy stories and free ebooks at beatrixsteam.com.